It's hard to decide when or whether you recommend upgrading a fuse board because things have come a long way over the years in terms of electrical safety. This podcast should help you determine whether it's a good idea to upgrade the fuse board or if you actually need to. So what actually is a fuse board? Well, the fuse board is basically the heart of any electrical installation. It protects every cable or every light fitting or socket against overload in most circumstances. Well, overload in most fuse boards. Because in many other fuse boards as well, yep, it can detect minor faults. And then there's new fuse boards that can detect surge from your incoming supply. From your incoming supply, or they can also detect arc detection. So if anything arcs, which arcs obviously cause a fire, yeah, they can detect that and shut the power off straight away. And in a fuse board, it normally contains one main switch that if you shut that off, it shuts the whole fuse board off. Then each individual circuit going into your house. You might have your cooker, your sockets, your lighting, your jacuzzi, your outside power. The more separated I think that a fuse board is, the better that installation is. And if you work as an electrician, you may know that the most commonly installed fuse board, I don't know, back in the 50s, 60s and 70s, is that Wylex fuse board. They've got the old rewireable fuses where you have to take them out and then feed a little bit of fuse wire through the middle, again, to be able to make it work if the fuse blows for any reason. And the problem with these fuse boards is that when a fuse did blow, people weren't electricians, they're just normal domestic householders or anything like that. They'd just put anything in there. I know for a fact that my dad used to use Kit Kat wrappers. When a fuse had blown, he used to just get a Kit Kat wrapper or something like that to put in there to make that circuit work. And I don't know how long that circuit was protected by Kit Kat wrapper. But yeah, we didn't have any fires, touch wood. And although back in the day, yes, they were modern, they were great, they were fantastic, and they did the job. For today's installations, yeah, they just don't cut it. And I don't know if you know, but fuse wire is no longer sold in wholesalers. If you go into wholesalers and say, yeah, I've blown a fuse, like a lot of the time I've been there to a boiler. And a boiler installation, yeah, I've tried to do the fuse, but it's blown. Have you got any fuse wire, Ben? Unfortunately, mate, no, I haven't got any fuse wire on the van anymore. I don't carry it. I normally recommend maybe changing the fuses. But I have been to one bloke that did a boiler, and because sometimes you can get them retrofit things from Screwfix, where you get the retro plugs, they go in there, and they're an MCB, miniature circuit breaker, rather than a fuse. Well, you can do that. That's not too bad. You can get that up and running again. But this old style fuse, it was like not Bakelite. It was some sort of glass or porcelain, I think it was, fuses that went in there with the little strip at the back of it, and that fuse had blown. I said, there's nothing you can do. In my eyes, you need to find a bit of fuse wire to get that back on. It basically install a small board next to it to control the boiler that will get that boiler up and running. But then looking at it, it needs a rewire, mate. Basically, the whole house is wired in rubber cabling. So that's where the customers maybe get a bit disheartened if you blow the fuse. They need to upgrade their electrical supply, which is not a bad thing, because these old consumer units that are still around, that are still in people's houses, they're dangerous. And if any of your customers have maybe one of these old Wylex rewireable fuse boards, then yeah, you will 100%, you'll recommend upgrading it. But sometimes you don't necessarily have to. If you're an electrician and you're going in there and you're installing something like adding onto the lighting circuit or adding a socket on that circuit, yes, it's got to be RCD protected. And with an old Wylex fuse board, you're not going to get an RCD, or you can get an MCB retrofit to go in there, but you can't get that RCD. You will need to upgrade that fuse board or put maybe an additional fuse board on the side, which is going to cost you a couple of £100. So you might as well recommend to the customer to upgrade the whole lot. Because then after the old Wylex boards that were the rewirable fuses, what we had was the MCBs, the military circuit breakers. They were a lot more efficient. This is what the retrofit ones get. And you get some of these old Wylex boards that plug in. You can get MCBs that control the circuits, like maybe a 6 amp or a 32 amp or a 40 amp maybe, but they're switches. So if they detect an overload on that circuit or a short, maybe a live to neutral, it would knock the circuit off. It won't blow the fuse wire. So then that eliminates the problem of a customer coming along and putting a Kit Kat wrapper in the fuse. Because I can guarantee you, back in the day, that was one of the main causes of fire. People didn't know what fuse wire to put in which carrier. Yep, if you did a bit of research, but then you maybe had to have a little booklet because we didn't have the internet back in their days. And you needed to know what fuse wire to put in there. And many people didn't, like my dad. And he didn't. He just put anything in there to get it working. I would swear he must have put a nail in there at some point. But then going back to these old Wylex boards, there's so many properties with an old Wylex board in there. And then maybe get asked by the customer, can you test the whole property and let me know what the condition of the wiring is? Not 9 times out of 10, but sometimes the wiring is fine. It's surprisingly fine. The wiring tests out okay, and you say, yeah, you just need to upgrade your board. But you don't necessarily need to upgrade your board. If you're not doing any add-ons to that property, maybe you're not adding any circuits, you're not adding maybe a lot of the time, they might as well need, you need some smoke alarms putting in, mate. And I can't just add that off the lighting circuit. You need to be RCD protected. So you need to then say, yep, I recommend upgrading the fuse board. But if that property is just getting tested, you can't really say it's a fail. If every fuse has maybe, I don't know, like a 32 amp ring circuit in and it's red, and then a 16 amp circuit on a 2.5, and everything's fine like that, then you can basically say, yeah, that fuse board's fine. But you can't have any work done to the house because it will need to be RCD protected. But you don't necessarily have to upgrade it. It's a massive recommendation. Yeah, you can say, look, you need to, it's a big red flag. You need to upgrade your fuse board because there's so many better fuse boards out there at the moment. But you don't necessarily have to. Because after the MCBs were out, then a short while after, we had the RCDs that come onto the market. RCDs sometimes can be a nuisance. Maybe if you're rewiring a house that's needs the wiring sort of upgrading, and people just want to change their fuse board to do RCD protected. It'll trip. You get a lot of nuisance tripping because then you've got to go around the whole property and make sure that it's spot on. And a lot of the time in an older property, they've shared the neutral on the lighting circuit if it's old wiring. So then you cannot separate the upstairs and downstairs lighting circuit like it used to be possibly on the old Wylex board. So that's a problem that you're going to have. And then that leads into maybe saying, yeah, you're going to need to rewire your lighting circuit. Because if it's got shared neutral, a lot of the time they're in singles as well that don't really have an earth in some of them cables. So yes, it's definitely recommend upgrade your lighting wiring to the current regulations. And this is it. Changing the fuse board, it can uncover a shed load of problems. You don't necessarily just change the fuse board and everything's safe and everything's fantastic. If you change a fuse board and it's now got an RCD in there, and especially when it was 16th edition boards, 16th or 17th? I think 17th edition boards, where you had the RCD that protected so many circuits. It was a split load board, basically. You had an RCD that protected say it's a 10-way board. You had an RCD that protected 5 circuits, and then another RCD that protected the another 5. If they had maybe a light that was in their garden that was donkey's years old and a bit of water got in and it tripped off, they'd all get concerned. So all my electrics is gone, and there'll always be the electrician's problem. Think, since you fitted that fuse board, my electric trips off. I'd rather it trip off than cause a fire, and it's tripping off for a reason. And normally with the RCDs, they trip off at the slight little detection of maybe a bit of damp in there or a bit of water. So yeah, they do their job basically, but they knock off sort of 5 circuits. So they're not. The people are a lot of the time they're unsure whether it's the outside light, or it's a tumble dryer, or if it's a sockets or a toaster, or it might be their immersion heater, something like that. It will knock off the whole lot, so they'll get worried. And this is why we solved the problem with the 18th edition board. And the 18th edition boards, they were fitted with RCBOs, an RCD plus overcurrent, so residual current device plus overcurrent, RCBO, and that is where each individual circuit was protected by its own RCBO or its own RCD as well as overprotection. It's a bit complicated to get your head round, but it's basically a lot better. Every circuit had its own protection of an RCD and overcurrent, which was the fuse, whether it was 6, 32, 16, 50, whatever it was. So then if there ever was a fault on a circuit or in a property, then it would only trip that circuit. It would only knock off that supply. Maybe the lighting would have a problem on. Sometimes when a bulb goes, the old filament lamps, if it goes, it'll pop the RCB or the RCBO, basically. It'll pop that and people think, oh, I've got a problem. Sometimes you just got to reset it and it's fine and put a decent bulb in it, like an LED one. But we didn't stop there. They still advance from there as well. And the most common practice of today, which if you're an electrician and you're working and you fit a new fuse board, you want to be fitting fully loaded RCBO board, metal clad board as well, because that changed. And so you've got to fit a metal clad board with surge protection. And surge protection, that's sort of come around in the last 2 or 3 years, and it helps properties absorb a surge from the outgoing supply. So basically the supply that's coming into the house, if it has a fluctuation of voltage or a surge or anything, it will protect your appliances. Because a lot of people, they used to get these extension leads that they plug all their computers into. Because if your computer gets a surge from maybe 230 volts to 250 for just a split second, it's going to blow a lot of the components in that board. So they used to plug their computers and electronics in with this surge protection extension lead. Well, this surge protection inside a board, that eliminates you having to buy 5 or 6 different extension leads to protect your computers from a surge. If you upgrade your board, that'll protect your whole house. So that's going to bring it up to scratch to what the current regulations are. Every circuit will be RCD protected plus overcurrent, RCBO. So long as they're protected by the right size fuse, each cable, then you're fine to go with surge protection. I don't think surge protection is compulsory, but it's always a good idea. A fantastic idea to do. It's an extra 40 quid to put into it, and it helps that property. That's on a normal domestic installation. On a HMO, however, on the sockets or some other components, they have to be protected by an AFDD. What's an AFDD? It's an arc fault detection device. Basically, these will detect small little arcs. If there's any arcing, like a loose connection inside a socket, then it's going to start arcing just that little bit. It's going to detect it and shut the supply off. Because obviously arcing causes heat, and then heat turns into fire, and this is what we're trying to stop. We don't like electrical fires. Nobody likes electrical fires. It causes a lot of disruption, let's be honest. But this is the whole reason why arc protection is coming out. I do believe later on down the line, there will be a regulation where every circuit has to be protected with an AFDD. Well, that's going to be a bit of a nightmare because them AFDDs are sort of around £100 each. Where you can get the RCBOs, say £15, £20 a piece to fill the board up, that's your best option, I think, at the minute, the RCBOs. It's just, it makes it look nice and neat. The 16th edition boards, the split load boards, are old hat. Don't put them in anymore. Do the fully loaded RCBOs. And then, I don't know, like I've never installed lately a board without putting surge protection in. So just you get the surge protection with a board these days. If you buy a certain board, it comes with surge protection. Because it rarely happens, but a surge protection will also protect your property from lightning strikes. So if you're prone to lightning and thunderstorms in your area, which we get in the UK quite a bit, this will protect your property from any of your kit getting damaged in your house through surge protection. And if anyone asks you, how long will a consumer unit be relevant for? It's a bit of a tricky question. But I would say that if you install a circuit, maybe a brand new Luden board or something like that, then later on, if you have to go back and maybe put an extra socket on that supply, you can easily whip out and change it to an AFDD if that becomes the new regulation for electrical to install. Maybe it might say right later on you have to have the circuit protected by an AFDD. Well, okay, yes, you can easily swap it out. So a board should basically last you, I think, 10, 20 years. Like, you think about these Wylex boards that are still around now, that were installed back in the 50s. So it's 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Flipping hell, they've lasted around 50, 60 years, if not longer. They're still about now. So if you have got a board freshly installed in your house, I think it's going to last a little while. However, there still is reasons to upgrade the board, even if it's brand new. A lot of people have a board that say, I only got that changed 5 years ago. Yeah, but now you've had an extension, and it's either I put another board on, or we upgrade the board that you've already got to, I don't know. It's to make it nice and neat. You got everything in one place, and maybe there's only the size enough in that area for one board, because some people have their boards in the bleeding kitchen or something like that in a kitchen cupboard. Well, you've got to rip that out and put a new one in because you need 2 more spare ways or something like that for the extension of the lighting and the sockets. So that is a good reason why you need to upgrade a current regulation board, because you need more ways. But again, a lot of electricians that I know and myself, you install a board with at least 2 or 3 spare ways. If not, go for the biggest board. And the more ways that you've got spare for future expansion in that board, the better. Because then that board's nice and big as well, nice to work on. I do get with some people, when I put a new board in, they say, I thought the new boards would be smaller. Smaller than the old Wylex boards. It's not going to happen. They're not going to get smaller. If anything, they're going to get bigger because they're better. Like the new metal clad boards, you don't get them old Baker-like covers anymore. And they're just, they do go loose. This is the thing. They cause problems sometimes as well. So yes, if you have got a Wylex board, I can't recommend it enough. Get it upgraded. So what are the benefits of having a brand new consumer unit installed in your property? Or things that you could recommend to your customers as well? The reasons that you can say to your customer, the benefits of having a new board. There is plenty. One is protection against electrical faults. You can explain to them with a modern day RCBO board, it's protecting you against anything that's going to happen. If there's a loose connection, sometimes that RCD will keep tripping. If there's a slight fault in that property, rather than cause a fire, that circuit's going to trip off. I'm not saying that every single time. There is certain scenarios where if a property even has an RCD, there is other circumstances that come across and there's still a fire. But in most circumstances, an RCBO in a board will protect you against electric shock and electrical fires. And number 2, compliance with electrical regulations. If you ever go to sell your property and they say, yes, that house needs a rewire. It happens all the time. I've been looking at houses lately and you can tell straight away whether the house needs a rewire or some electrical work doing because of the state of the fuse board. If you've got a modern day fuse board and you ever come to sell your house or even rent your house out, that is going to put you in good stead where you don't have to fork out an extra grand to get the thing upgraded, because you're going to have the most modern fuse board there is on the market with SPD and RCBOs. Because with landlords properties, just for instance, they require you to have a test on that property to say that the electrical installation is safe. And if you've got a certificate that says, yes, it's got a 4-way Wylex board in there, then there'll be some small stipulation in that insurance certificate, in the house insurance for the landlord, that say, yeah, if you've got electrical fire, we don't protect you against that. You've got to have a modern day fuse board. So check your insurance to make sure that it covers you basically for a property. And if you're a landlord, it's a good idea to get that electrical check done as well. And all the recommendations on that certificate, just get them done. Because if you're letting the property, you don't want to be caught with your pants down sort of thing if anything bad happens. Number 3 would be better load management. And in some cases, load efficiency. If a board has got separated up circuits, like some boards, they have 5 or 6 lighting circuits on one MCB or RCBO, it's overloaded. You need to get a couple more ways put in there for you to spread the load out, because then that will make you a lot more efficient in your property as well, and it could even reduce your electricity bills. And if you opt for the smart meter, you can get a meter next to your consumer unit that will tell you the consumption of what you're getting. And that is also a good idea, because then you know how much it is, not just when you boil the kettle, but maybe when you have a shower, or how much energy you're using. Because with electricity prices at the moment, it's going up and down all the time. So then you'll know, right, I'm not going to leave them lights on permanently outside. I might get an electrician to fit a PIR or a dusk till dawn sensor on, Because some people I see, I drive past their houses in the evening, and I think, you've got them lights on 24 hour. They're all GU10 lamps, burning electricity away. I bet that's a couple of pound a night. And number 4, future-proofing that property. If that property has a new consumer unit, all RCBO protected with surge protection, and a few more spare ways, you're not going to have to get your board upgraded next time you want, I don't know, a hot tub. Say you come into a bit of money and think, yep, I need a decent hot tub supply. And someone comes along and says, yeah, you've just spent sort of $8,000 on your hot tub, but you've got to spend another $1,000 on upgrading your board and then getting that hot tub supply put in. A lot of people that, I don't want to do that. They'll spend $8,000 on a bleeding hot tub, but not the electrical safety of the property. So if you get it done now with the spare ways, it's not going to be a surprise when you go and get that hot tub. Number 5, getting a brand new board fitted will reduce your cost of maintenance. Because once an electrician comes into your property and he fits you a nice new, fantastic new consumer unit or fuse board, then they're going to check everything in the house, because they're so sensitive, these RCBOs, that if there's any problem in that house, it's going to trip off. Always do it. Go around and test every circuit to make sure that it basically works properly and that you haven't got anything mixed up. Like, my common fault for fitting an RCBO board is putting 2 lighting circuits into 2 separate 6 amp or 10 amp RCBOs, and the neutrals are mixed. The neutrals are mixed somewhere, the upstairs and downstairs lighting. So you switch on the lighting downstairs, switch it on upstairs, trip, gone, done. So then you've got to find that fault. So you've got the electrician going around basically making that property tip top. So once he's changed the board, you can confident that it's going to be a good condition of electrical insulation in that house. And installing a new fuse board as well can make sure that whoever's previously owned that property, or yes, some DIY dudes, you've been in there and you've dabbed that 16 amp, you've dabbed that 2.5 cable into a 32 amp socket just because you wanted a socket in your garage, it can make it work better. Because more than likely in your garage, you're plugging in welders or heaters or anything like that, and it's overloading that circuit. Well, you won't know until one day that's melted and gone pop. But if someone comes in and sees that 2.5 and tests it out and find out it's a radial, they'll put it on their own 16 amp supply. So if you do overload it, rather than getting hot and damaging the cable and have to rewire it later on, it'll trip the fuse. So then you'll know that maybe you need to call that electrician back to put a decent supply into your garage. Number 6 is if you've got a split board where it's got 20 ways, not 20 maybe, but 10 ways of RCBOs, then if there ever is a problem of maybe a leak or something gone wrong, if it's all separated up nice and neat, it makes it 10 times easier for an electrician to find that fault, for an electrician to diagnose a problem, rectify it and fix it. Because if you want to spend thousands of pounds of electrician trying to determine where it is, on some fuse boards, like I say, they've dobbed in 6 cables in 1 MCB, well, it's sort of a needle in a haystack sort of thing. You've got to check the whole lot. But if you can separate it all up and say, right, yeah, it's the garden lighting. The garden lighting's got a problem. You can always figure it out to say, right, yeah, okay, have a look around the garden lighting then. But if you've got the garden lighting on with the house lighting, with the loft lighting and the driveway lighting, you've got a bigger area to cover to fault find. So if you have a decent not split load, keep saying that. If you have a decent board that split up all the circuits, nice and individual, it makes it a lot easier for an electrician to find the fault. And number 7, which is probably the best of all, which anyone will listen to, that will make that property worth more money. If you've kept that property up to date with the electrical insulation, if you ever come to sell it, people are going to see that and think, yes, I do not need to spend around $1,000 to upgrade that fuse board. I am quite confident it's all in tip-top shape. And there is only one bad point to upgrading your fuse board. It's the amount of bad electricians that are out there that do it. They go out there, they put a new fuse board and they'll just shove anything in. They won't test it. They'll put them in wrong. It's just, you've got to be confident to have a decent electrician to change your fuse board. Because what's the point in upgrading the fuse board? Not just to look nice, new and shiny. It's for it to be safe. And this is what you want. You want an electrician to do it that knows what he's doing. That each terminal that has to be torqued up to the correct setting. It's these small little things, but most of electricians that I know, they are perfectionists. And you go through, you torque them up nice and neat. Because I've done it before where I thought, that's tight enough. I've given that a nice tighten up. But you think, hang about, let me just go through and click it with the torque screwdriver. It's always a little bit more. And if you torque it up to the the manufacturer's specifications, then it's going to last longer. It's going to last a lot better. Just make sure that every screw in that fuse board is nice and tight. And then this way, you'll have a good reputation as an electrician in installing fuse boards. And if you're like me, I don't mind doing a fuse board because we're sitting down in one place where it's not rolling around the loft, doing bleeding down lights in a bathroom. I'd rather sit in one place and get that nice and neat. And it's making that house 10 times safer. You always get a bit of satisfaction about changing a fuse board because you find a few faults and think, that could have caused a fire. This could have caused a fire. So you're making that family home safer. So if you've got customers that sometimes think, I don't need to upgrade my fuse board. That old Wylex fuse board's been there for 20 years and it's been fine. More than likely more than 20 years. But then they probably don't understand that it's a good idea to change the fuse board. So I've created a PFD download that you can download, put your logo at the top, or even just send it as it is to a customer to advise them to say, check this out. And it might make you think twice about upgrading your fuse board, or then you'll see the benefits of upgrading your fuse board. Make sure to put your number at the bottom as well, because no doubt they'll call you. So if you check out down below in the show notes, there's going to be a link to download that to be able to print it out and give to your customers too.